Everything your parents taught you about money is going to keep you broke. And I know that sounds harsh, but stick with me for the next few minutes because I'm going to show you something that most people never figure out until it's too late. And if you grew up in a middle class or working class household like I did, there's a very good chance that the financial advice sitting in your head right now, the stuff you heard at the dinner table, the stuff your parents believed with everything they had, is not just outdated, it's quietly working against you. Here's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to walk you through 7 specific pieces of money advice that your parents probably gave you, advice that sounded completely reasonable, and I'm going to show you exactly why following it in today's world is costing you tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. But here's the thing I want you to understand before we even get started. Your parents weren't wrong because they were dumb. They weren't wrong because they didn't care. They were wrong because they were playing a completely different game, a game that no longer exists, and nobody told them the rules changed. So if you've ever felt behind financially, if you look at your bank account and feel like you're doing everything right but somehow still not getting ahead, this video is going to explain why. And more importantly, it's going to show you what to do instead. Stay with me because the first one hits harder than you think. Let's start with the big one. Go to college, get a good job, work hard, retire with a pension. For your parents' generation, that was a legitimate wealth-building strategy. College was affordable. You could graduate with a degree, walk into a stable job, stay there for 30 years, and retire comfortably. That system worked. But here's where it gets dangerous. The average student loan debt in America right now is over $37,000, and that's just the average. Millions of people graduate with $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 in debt. Then they spend the first decade of their adult lives, the most important decade for building wealth, paying that debt back with interest. Think about that. At 22 years old, instead of investing, instead of building, instead of taking risks while you have the energy and the time and nothing to lose, you're writing a check to Sally Mae every single month for a degree that might not even be in a field you're still working in. Now here's the real kicker, and this is the part nobody tells you. The wealthiest people in the country, the ones who built generational wealth in the last 20 years, didn't do it by having a good job. They did it by owning things. Businesses, real estate, equity. They own assets that work while they sleep. A job, no matter how good it is, trades your time for money. The moment you stop working, the money stops coming. But an asset keeps producing. That's the fundamental shift your parents never made, because in their day, a pension did that job for them. Pensions are almost gone now, and nobody replaced them with anything. They just quietly disappeared and left you holding the bag. So what do you do instead? You still get educated, but you get educated intentionally. You choose skills that create leverage. You treat your career as a launch pad to build equity, not a destination. And you start owning things as early as humanly possible. But that brings us to the second piece of advice, and this one is probably the most universally believed myth about money in America. Your parents told you home ownership is the American dream. They told you renting is throwing money away. They told you house is the best investment you can make. And for decades, they were right. But watch this. From 1950 to 1990, housing prices in America grew at roughly the same rate as inflation. A home was a stable store of value, but it wasn't a high-performance investment. The real benefit was the forced savings. You paid down your mortgage and built equity over time. It was disciplined. It was stable. It worked. But here's where it gets dangerous. The average home price in the US right now is hovering around $400,000. In coastal cities, double that. And mortgage rates are high enough that a $400,000 home might cost you $700,000 or more by the time you're done paying interest. Here's the trap. When your parents bought a house, they were buying an asset in a rising market with affordable entry costs. When you buy a house today in many markets, you are locking yourself into a 30-year payment that stretches your budget to the limit, leaving you no capital to invest anywhere else, all for an asset that may not appreciate enough to justify the cost. And this is the part that will really make you think. If you took the difference between your rent and what a mortgage would cost you and invested that money every single month in an index fund, historically, you would often come out ahead or equal to the homeowner after 10 years with way more flexibility. Now, I want to be clear. Owning a house is not a bad thing. In the right market, at the right price, it absolutely makes sense. But the blanket statement that renting is throwing money away is financially illiterate. You're paying for shelter, just like the homeowner is paying for maintenance, taxes, insurance, and interest, all of which are also throwing money away. The house conversation is more nuanced than your parents made it sound. But the next piece of advice, this one is probably making the banks very rich and you very poor without you even realizing it. Just save your money, put it in the bank, build up that savings account. Solid advice, responsible, safe, and absolutely devastating in today's economy. Here's why. Inflation, meaning the rate at which prices rise each year, has historically averaged around 3% annually. In recent years, it's been much higher. A high-yield savings account, if you shop around, might get you 4 or 5% right now. But most traditional savings accounts still paying you 0.01%. So if you have $10,000 sitting in a bank account earning 0.01% interest and inflation is running at 3%, you are losing money every single year. You're not being safe, you're being slowly robbed. Your parents told you to save because in their day, savings accounts paid 5, 6, sometimes 8% interest. Leaving money in the bank actually made you money. That world is largely gone. Now here's a story I want you to picture. Imagine two 25-year-olds, call them Marcus and David. They both get a $5,000 bonus at work. Marcus does what his parents told him. He puts it in a savings account earning 0.5%. Feels responsible, feels safe. David puts it in a simple S&P 500 index fund and leaves it alone. 30 years later, Marcus has about $6,000. David has about $57,000. Same starting point. One listened to old advice, one understood how money actually works in the modern world. That's not a gimmick, that's just math. Compound growth over time is the most powerful force in personal finance, and your parents never pointed you directly at it because their savings accounts used to do the same thing. But here's where it gets interesting, because the fourth piece of advice doesn't just affect your money, it affects your entire sense of identity around wealth. This one is cultural and it runs deep. Don't talk about money. It's rude, it's private. You don't ask people what they make. Where did this rule come from? Honestly, it came from a culture designed to keep workers from realizing they were being underpaid. Think about that for a second. When you don't know what your coworkers make, you can't negotiate effectively. When you don't know what's normal for your field, you can't advocate for yourself. When money is treated as a taboo topic, the only people who benefit are the ones setting your salary. Your parents weren't trying to hurt you with this advice. They were passing down a social norm they inherited. But that norm costs the average worker thousands of dollars a year in lost negotiation leverage. And it goes deeper than salary. When you grow up in a home where money is never discussed openly, you develop a weird emotional relationship with it. Money becomes stressful to think about, scary to look at, something you deal with only when you have to, not something you engage with proactively. Wealthy families, statistically, talk about money all the time. They discuss investments at dinner. They explain interest rates to their kids at 12 years old. They treat financial literacy like a subject in school because they know it is. The silence around money and working and middle-class homes isn't modesty. It's a disadvantage being passed down generation after generation. Start talking about money. Learn openly. Ask questions. Compare notes. The discomfort you feel doing that, that's the cost of a bad cultural inheritance. Push through it. Okay, we are at the halfway point. And I need to stop you here because what I'm about to tell you in the second half of this video is where most people check out, and it's exactly where the biggest mistakes get made. We've been talking about advice that costs you money, but here's the twist. The next 3 pieces of advice aren't just financially costly, they're psychologically designed to keep you playing small. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
Debt is bad. Stay out of debt. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. On the surface, reasonable, responsible even. But here's the truth that changes everything. There are two kinds of debt. There is bad debt, credit cards, payday loans, car payments on a depreciating vehicle you can't afford. That debt makes other people rich at your expense. Your parents were absolutely right to warn you about that. But there is also good debt, and this is where the wealthy operate that most people never learn about. A real estate investor who borrows $200,000 at 7% interest to buy a property that generates $2,000 a month in rent is using debt to build wealth. They are using the bank's money to acquire an asset that produces income. The debt is a tool. Business owners use debt to hire staff, buy equipment, expand, to generate more than they borrowed.